Welcome to the breakdown. I was about to say the morning show's fucking title. Well, welcome to the breakdown, episode 570. Sponsored by Gemini. Okay, yesterday it ended where you had a chance to sign up for the Bitcoin credit card and enter in to win one of the two, or maybe possibly could have really lucked out and won both Cyber Beasts that Gemini was giving away. A shout out to those who participated, who signed up to Gemini or applied to get Gemini's Bitcoin credit card. That credit card is dope. More on that as we move forward with this show. Not today, but as we move forward with the show in the next few weeks. I'll be dropping content here, more educational shit on it, and also on TikTok. So shout out to Gemini for doing that. Also, if you don't have an exchange and you're still looking for somebody, man, I feel look at them cuts. Look at them cuts. You can even see it. Anyway, for those that are still looking for a great exchange, well, look no further than Gemini. Okay, Gemini. Sign up to Gemini. Trade $1,000 in crypto, get $100 in Bitcoin. Click the link. They're all over the social media platform. There you go. Powered by GNN, the Gakshi News Network. We got a lot more media personalities coming on. I appreciate everybody tuning in and loving the content that is being pushed out there. All right. One thing that we are is fair. Nobody can ever say that we're not fair, and nobody can ever say that we're scripted. Nobody can ever say that. Anyway, Thursdays, you know how it goes down. We always have this guy who comes on. He's done a few things in this space. Hopefully you recognize him. He's done a few things, I think, in this space. But he's on here every other week on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Guy's done a lot, man. One of the co-founders of Ethereum, founded Cardano. Maybe I just bring him on. Without further ado, here is Charles. Charles is going, Charles.
Hey. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
I see you now. What's going on?
Okay. Hotel fucking Wi-Fi, man. I tried for like 10 minutes to join, and it's so bad. Why is this a problem in 2025?
You imagine the hotels can't get their Wi-Fi right?
Yeah, there's got to be like a protocol or something like that. It's so bad.
Why not? You need Starlink.
I was talking to the security detail. I said, guys, we need to just start carrying a Starlink with us wherever we go, and then we have our own internet wherever we go. Because we do when we go like to Amazon or exotic places, but we typically don't in the developed world, you know. But I
Yeah,
guess North
typically not
Carolina
happening,
is
right?
not the developed world, right?
Um, all right, before we get into like, we have a lot of shit to talk about. So before we get into that, I love how they twisted your words when you. I think you did a just a pop up AMA and you talked about, kind of like maybe you can elaborate on it more, but making like a treasury for to where like you gain more ADA from yield from Bitcoin, and I think they kind of I see people
This is
twist all they twisted your those words with. I mean, they did a remix to your stuff.
it's just like it's a game of broken telephone, you know. So here's the situation: Cardano has a treasury. It has 1.7 billion ADA sitting in that treasury. On any given Sunday, depending on the price of ADA, that's usually more than $1 billion. At the all-time high, it was $5 billion of money. So that is a passive, unmanaged, single asset, non-yield bearing treasury, meaning we just sits there like a dragon on a big pile of gold, doesn't do anything. So the question is, do we want to move some of that treasury into an active, managed, multi-asset treasury and create a yield with it? That's the first question. We term that the Cardano Sovereign Wealth Fund or something like that. Then if that idea is a good idea, there's a question of, okay, well, what is the goal here? Is the goal to build up the Cardano DeFi ecosystem, or is the goal just namely to get yield for a return for Cardano Sovereign Wealth Fund, or some blend of the two? The two problems before us in Cardano: one is the stablecoin ecosystem is lackluster. Our TVL is around 340 million, depending on how you count it. And the stablecoin minting in Cardano is only $33.5 million. So our ratio between the stablecoin and TVL is about 9.8%. So when you look at Solana, it's about $11 billion in stablecoin compared to their TVL, which is around 10 billion or something. It's about 110% Solana, give or take. When you look at Ethereum, it's like 190 billion in stablecoins or some number. It's like 198% to their TVL. So we're very small compared to the distribution on both those sides. So one of the that, in addition to having a wealth fund, convert about $100 million worth of ADA into some stable assets, synthetics, asset-backed, algorithmic, and get them deployed into the DeFi space to prime the pump. The other proposal is that the second part of it is that there's Bitcoin DeFi. And we're saying, hey, Cardano is going to be a great layer for Bitcoin DeFi. Well, we got to prime the pump. So there has to be some first money in. So what's the first 25 to $50 million worth of Bitcoin in the Cardano ecosystem to start showing how Bitcoin can generate yield in the Cardano ecosystem? So my proposal is, why don't we take about $100 million worth of ADA, convert it, put half into stable coins in a blended package that are Cardano native stable coins, and then the half into Bitcoin. You put those two things together, it'll start generating yield. Take the yield, buy ADA with it, donate the ADA back to the treasury. And then you've begun having a mechanism to move between an unmanaged single asset on-chain treasury to a managed off-chain treasury that has some governance structure that is out of band with it. So what we're doing is we talked to a bunch of people. There's going to be some workshops in July, and then a proposal is going to be dropped in August at Rare Evo to showcase how something like this can be done within the Cardano governance framework, where there's kind of a DAO and a governing board and a Wyoming entity and a BVI entity and an administrator and then an auditor and all that stuff, and then some legacy Web3 treasury management companies that would handle all of that type of stuff, and they can take care of all that active management. Then what the government of Cardano can do is seamlessly move back and forth. So when they want to divest from the active treasury, they just have it divest its assets and buy ADA and donate them to the treasury. And when they want to move from the on-chain treasury to the active treasury, so from passive to active, they just use a treasury withdrawal, which is an on-chain governance function. So you have both sides now, because we only have one side. So then I say all that, and then as soon as I said, these Bitcoin people show up, say, see, they're abandoning Cardano for Bitcoin. They're selling their shitcoin for Bitcoin. And then they say, like, they don't have faith in ADA anymore. It's like, we have a lot of faith in ADA as an ecosystem. The ecosystem is the largest holder of ADA. It's sitting on $1 billion worth of ADA, right? But what's the first thing you do when you have a sovereign wealth fund? You diversify. And what's also the other thing you do? You solve problems with it. So everybody's complaining when Circle, when Circle, when Circle, the Cardano ecosystem. Circle looks at two metrics: how many stablecoins are deployed, and they look at your TVL and your transactional turnaround within that ecosystem. And if you're at 33 million and 300 million, and your competitors are sitting in 8 billion to 10 billion or 198 billion to 100 billion, that's not really a competitive metric. So somebody has to be first money in. Historically, this is done by the cryptocurrency foundations. Our foundation sucks balls. They don't do it. They don't know how to do it. They don't care to do it. They don't have the legal structure to do it. They're sitting on a big pile of ADA, and they're just doing Georgian supply chains for wine, and they're doing a little bit of an identity wallet that nobody ever needs and is going to use, but they don't actually deploy any of their giant pile of ADA to get things done. And that's one of the reasons why we fall behind, because all the other ecosystems, those foundations deploy hundreds of millions to billions of dollars into these treasury management functions, which create TVL, they create stablecoin issuance. Like, for example, when Circle came to Algorand, you'll notice that like hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Circle was minted. I wonder who minted that. Must have been a mysterious benefactor, right? And it's the same when you look at SWE and when Circle came to SWE and these types of things. So the good news is we were smart enough to create a fallback. So if you have kind of a brain dead entity that doesn't do anything, you have a decentralized option to resolve that. The bad news is you have to actually go kick people and get it done. So there's a whole process of getting people rallied and pushed forward and to do these types of things. So it is what it is, and the good news is I think we can get a proposal out pretty quickly as a community, and then it's pretty straightforward. You just elect a board of governors at the DAO, and then they appoint an administrator. The administrator works and gets bids for treasury managers, and then the treasury manager does it, and then you have a pipeline back and forth to move between ADA and a single unmanaged treasury to a multi-asset managed treasury. And then what's cool is you can talk about blockchain to blockchain partnerships. So Bitcoin DeFi is a Bitcoin to ADA partnership. But then we could also imagine maybe XRP or maybe another ecosystem, and we can mix and match, these types of things. And so other ecosystems can come and say, can we do a strategic purchase where we buy some ADA and then you buy some of our stuff as an OTC swap, and now the treasuries on both sides hold each other's assets. So we have an economic partnership.
So it's amazing. So basically, you're trying to figure out how to make Cardano's ecosystem wealthier and healthier, and Pomp takes your shit and turns it into, well, look, here's the founder of Cardano selling, realizing that Bitcoin's like this is what I'm talking about. This ecosystem is so toxic and poisonous. It's just like, why not report on what was actually said? And I get it. Spinning up some bullshit like that gives you more clicks, but that does nothing for our space. You're reporting on bullshit. So I'm glad that you were here to clarify on what you saw is a benefit to the Cardano ecosystem.
Yep. It's just it's our industry. They lie and lie and lie and lie. And there's just a lot of garbage people and garbage actors, and they don't care to understand or explain. I did a whiteboard video where I literally explained all this, drew pretty pictures and used all the terminology and gave timelines and explained why we're doing it. I mean, would you rather, like, if you have $1 billion, just leave it in the bank, get no returns on it, or place it and get 10% per year? I'm not a smart man, Jenny, but maybe the 10% is better than the 0%. I mean, so if we have $1 billion worth of buying power in the ecosystem, we probably should diversify some and create some yield, especially if everybody keeps saying the same fucking thing again and again. Cardano DeFi needs TVL. Cardano DeFi needs users. Cardano DeFi needs more yield products. Cardano DeFi needs more transactions. Okay, let's do that. So let's put some money in and do that. Let's do it. It's so simple, right?
What do you think if you were able to do this, right? You acquire everything and you do everything step by step the way that you just mentioned it. How much more money would end up being in the treasury for Cardano?
Well, here's the thing. Let's say you divest $100 million worth of ADA. We catch the bull run. We could close out the year and the value of ADA would be higher than the divestment of that ADA into that other asset. So you might end up having a treasury that's worth $2 billion by the end of the year, even though there's less ADA inside that treasury. But then it's 2 billion plus the sovereign wealth fund, which, by the way, it's not an expense, it's an investment. You can always convert the funds in the sovereign wealth fund back. And if these fucking Bitcoin maxis are like, well, Bitcoin's going to the moon. Well, okay, let's say ADA stays static and Bitcoin goes up. I can dump the Bitcoin after 6 to 12 months at a 2x or 5x or whatever their moon math says, if it's 250,000 or 500,000, and then rebuy ADA. So I just got 250% more ADA for that placement into the Cardano treasury. So it's like, okay. So these guys, it's like you can't win no matter what you do. It's like we want Bitcoin DeFi in the Cardano ecosystem. So this is a sign of good faith to the Bitcoin ecosystem. We're saying Bitcoin's a valuable asset. It's an asset we probably should hold. And we'd like to show how Bitcoiners can make money in Cardano. So we're so prepared to do that we're willing to take our ADA and risk that to showcase how Bitcoin can do that. And then a lot of Bitcoiners will see that and say, wow, there's already $50 million worth of Bitcoin placed in Cardano and it's generating yield. I should do that too. And then 50 turns to 500, and then 500 turns to 5 billion. And then suddenly our TVL numbers are as large or larger than Solana, just from that thing that you push through. Yeah. But somebody has to be the first capital in. Unlike the rest of the ecosystem, because they have functioning foundations with brains and endowments, we don't have a foundation to be first money in. The fallback is the on-chain treasury. So my proposal is use the on-chain treasury to do this, and then build a governance structure around it. Now, you can debate whether it should be a board of governors with 5 to 7 or 11, or you can debate how the administrator is selected, what the investment prospectus is, and how liquidation occurs, and how much gets converted to ADA versus reinvested in the fund. And that's all details, right? But there's a philosophical high-level concept of, should Cardano have a passive treasury or an active treasury? Sovereign wealth fund of a nation like Norway is active. The sovereign wealth fund of Abu Dhabi is active. Norway is sitting on 1.7 trillion with a T, dollars. They're one of the wealthiest countries in human history because of good fiscal policy. The state of Alaska has a sovereign wealth fund, $180 billion sitting inside its sovereign wealth fund. So at some point, you don't even have to pay taxes because your sovereign wealth fund's so big, you just pay for the whole government. And Norway will reach that point within 20 years to 30 years at its current growth rate of its sovereign wealth fund. And Abu Dhabi is already there for its size scale. That's why they keep building skyscrapers and all this other stuff. So it's just one of those things where you got to take a step back and you got to just think, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? And also, what capabilities does this open up? Having an active treasury means we can do equity investments in key things. You can do partnership development, and you also can do strategic investments in other blockchain ecosystems.
Welcome to the Breakdown, episode 570, joined by Charles, breaking Cardano's ecosystem down and potentially what you can do with the treasury money that's in there. I want to ask you, okay, the Genius Act, that's been passed. What are your thoughts here? A lot of people say $2 to $3 trillion will be entering the crypto markets just from the passage of the bill. What are your thoughts here?
And I'm sorry, I'm picking up a lot of static on my headset, but I can hear you. Okay, am I coming in staticky, or am I sounding? I'm sounding good. Okay, yeah, you're coming in like a robot to me. Okay, so the Genius Act, it's a really interesting one, because what the Genius Act basically did is it made it okay for the big guys to get into the stablecoin space. So Circle right now thinks they got like a 12-inch penis. They actually have like a 2-inch penis. The problem is that all the guys with 12-inch penises aren't playing the game. Okay, those are people like JP Morgan, and those are people like BlackRock, and those are sovereigns coming in. With the Genius Act, it says, hey, it's time for Congo to play. And so basically that's what's going to happen. So JP Morgan's already trademarked stablecoin. The stablecoin alliance funds, the big banks will form. The Mag 7 are likely going to come on in. And then suddenly you'll wake up and you'll have 100 billion, 200 billion, 300 billion, 500 billion in stablecoin minted just like that inside these treasuries. And they'll enter the cryptocurrency space because we now have a regulatory framework for it. So you have a framework for KYC and AML. You have a framework for how disclosure works, how the asset custody works, what the compositions need to look like. And what's nice about Genius, all the bad shit got stripped out. The freeze and seize capability, that's out, is out. The Elizabeth Warren, everybody's accountable forever, and you're a fucking monster. That's out. She lost. And then Section 14 of the Genius Act was written by some brilliant anonymous person who's super brilliant. Actually, it's the first time ever that NIST has been put into a regulatory bill, a fintech regulatory bill, where NIST is actually going to help standardize U.S. regulation with MiCA. So, because the question was, how does U.S. stablecoin talk to European stablecoins? How do these two systems work together? But more importantly, now it means scientists and engineers have a seat at the table with the regulatory agencies to talk about technology. This is the first time ever. NIST is composed of PhD cryptographers and engineers, and the SEC is not. The CFTC is not. FinCEN is not. So it's nice to have them in the conversation about technology protocols. It's a very modern, nice bill. And what it also showed is we get shit done. 58 senators voted for this. They got shit done. They're actually moving the ball forward. They're getting things pushed forward. So it'll pass the House. President will sign it. The very next bill that's upcoming is the Clarity Act, which is the market structure bill. This is the big boy. We call this the Murder Gary Gensler Act. He can never come back. The vampire is going to stay in his coffin. This like Van Helsing has shown up with the stake and he's Satan die. He's getting rid of the vampires. So Gary can't come back and sue everybody out of oblivion. Once the Clarity Act passes, then that era of cryptocurrencies is over. There still needs to be a lot done to update and modernize securities laws for RWAs, and we couldn't get there with the Genius Act, but we'll get there with probably something beyond Clarity. But it might not happen this year. It could be a protracted fight next year, but it might be doable through policy changes alone at the Securities Exchange Commission. We'll have to see if there's a statutory requirement for it. So overall, though, it's not perfect. Coinbase didn't get what they wanted. They wanted yield-bearing stablecoins to be included, but that can be covered under an RWA if it's been a lightweight security infrastructure has been built in. But overall, I'm very happy with the direction and focus of it, and I think a lot of great progress has been done. And this was a hard one. There were a lot of ups and downs with it, a lot of twists and turns. And the first time is always the hardest. It's like we lost our crypto legislative virginity. So we now we actually know what we're doing, and it's a little messy. We'll take the shower next time. We'll be better. But overall, we're doing good.
But you believe that now that the Treasury Secretary said that he believes that $2 to $3 trillion goes into the crypto market. He also believes that the
by
U.S. dollar
2030
becomes shorter. You believe that?
Yeah, by 2030. And actually, what this does is it dollarizes the developing world. So all these places are going to start using stable coins, and they won't even use their banks anymore. So this is going to seriously fuck up the banking systems of the developing world, because if I'm like in Argentina, why the fuck would I put my money in one of their garbage banks? That steals your money and all this stuff. I'll just buy a stable coin, and now I have peer-to-peer relationships. So when I buy Microsoft products, I could just buy it with my stable coin. When I get paid by somebody abroad, they pay me in a stable coin, right? So basically, whether they like it or not, like, it dollarizes the entire world, and it really helps the U.S. So this is a big deal. And right now, there's about $243 billion in stable coins, and there's about 180 million transactions per month. There's going to probably be $1 trillion worth of stable coins by 2030. And that's just natural growth as we go through. But it could grow all the way up to 2 to 3. But I think the Cent is being a bit optimistic. That said, he's been talking to the big institutions like JP Morgan and these other guys, and they wanted it. They just flip a switch and whoop shit there. Here's the other thing. The commercial banking sector is going to start getting hit too. Because let's say you're a marijuana dispensary, or let's say that you're just a regular everyday business for that matter. Would you rather put your money in a non-FDIC insured account with 0% interest, or would you rather buy a stable coin that you have custody of, is full reserve, and potentially pays you a yield? And you have 24/7 access to that, and it's multi-sig, and it's much more secure. Or you only have 9 to 5 access Monday through Friday, and wire fraud happens all the time, and it takes 3 days to move your money. Like, which one would you rather do as a business? So the inadvertent thing about stablecoins is, and the uncomfortable, the quiet part, is that it's going to start really eating at the commercial banking side of things. And after SVB failed, and a lot of Silicon Valley people had to wake up, and they're like, whoa, we thought like these banks were super secure, and like all that. It's like, bank failures happen. It's called fractional reserve banking. Maybe you should look into that. And so stablecoins are a huge solution for this, and especially ones that are issued at a speedy bank, the special depository charter that we created over in Wyoming, because those are full reserve. And the way that these things are structured, they have to be full reserve instruments. So that the money's there, unless you don't think the U.S. government's going to pay its debt back, in which case that's a whole different can of worms, on this thing.
Well, was it a breakdown? Apparently, they're saying that my microphone is breaking down. I don't even know.
Yeah, you're coming in. Yeah, I hear you. You're coming in like a robot, dude.
Right now? Still?
No, you sound great. You're just like really far away.
Really? Like, what's going on? I think they're attacking me.
I think so.
I don't know. I tried. I restarted the system, guys. I hope that you. I don't know. I hear Charles. So as long as you guys are hearing Charles, and hopefully it's better now. I don't know, guys in the chat. You can go ahead and I'm getting DMs, text messages. We want to hear the conversation. I'm trying. Okay, now, okay, good. We're back. Audio's back. Sorry for the technical difficulties. 570, the breakdown with Charles here, breaking down, obviously, stablecoin, the Genius Act. We talked about, Cardano and the treasury. I wanted to talk about leading right into what do you think about everything that's going on in the Middle East right now?
I mean, there's two problems. One is the tactical problem, and the other is the strategic problem. So the tactical problem is quite easy to solve. If your only goal was to cripple and destroy Iran's capabilities, what the Israelis did is they this is the equivalent of coming into your hotel room and having a beautiful naked girl in your bed, and she's like, "Hey," it's like you're never going to have a better opportunity. Okay, if you want it, it's there. So they opened up Iran. They have one of the best special operations ever done in the history of special operations. They infiltrated the country. They spent years there. They built drone factories. They got special forces in the country. They destroyed all the SAM sites, which was quite difficult to do. And then they ran airstrikes. Actually, a friend of mine was one of the first rockets in, because he's a colonel in the IDF. And they just messed up the Iranians. And then they knew where all the generals were going to be. And so those generals, they knew where they were going to aggregate. And so when they aggregated, they killed them. So they did a decapitation strike. They did a capability destruction. And then they hit all the nuclear facilities and probably some classified stuff. Then they came to the Americans. And they're like, well, this is where the naked girl in the bed is. They're like, you got these things called B2s. And you have these things called MOPs. They're basically these massive ordnances that are bunker busters. They can go 200 feet down through steel reinforced concrete. And anyway, if you just fly in there, you could drop some of those things, and you could literally destroy every one of the centrifuges, all the nuclear weapons facilities, in literally 24 hours. So you just end the entire nuclear weapons program of Iran. And then also the Israelis are trying to kill Ayatollah Khomeini right now. So they actually kind of sort of know where he's at, and they're playing a game of cat and mouse, and they just keep killing people. So they're working pretty hard at this. But I think the only thing keeping him alive is the United States government is like, no, stop it. And the Israelis like, come on, we did a little Khomeini kill. So tactically, if the president wills it, in a week's time, you could do both a decapitation strike on the regime, and you also could destroy their nuclear capabilities for the next 20 years if they wanted to do that. And by the way, it's not Moab. Your user just said Israel got a Moab back in February. We're not talking about Moabs, and Moabs would not be useful for a bunker busting. You need a different ordnance that's specially designed to go underground. We developed them for Afghanistan for the cave fighting, and basically they go 200 feet and they explode. Moabs are surface level exploding, but it's a huge ordnance. It's like a sub-nuclear weapon. So anyway, that's tactical, and it's done deal if the president wants to do it. He moved the Nimitz, which is a carrier group, to the Mediterranean, and they have the Fifth Fleet there in Bahrain. They have great strike capabilities into Iran if they want to hit it. Strategically, though, what's the plan? And this is the General Mattis, like second order, third order, fourth order, and this is what people pay the big bucks for. Just because you can kill Ayatollah Khomeini and cripple the Iranians, do you want to? There's 92 million Iranians. There's a lot of ethnic divisions in Iran. There's a lot of complexities geopolitically in Iran. just because you get rid of bad guy A doesn't mean he's replaced with good guy B. Bad guy A can be replaced with turbo bad guy. Lenin was a bad guy. He was replaced with Stalin, who's a really bad guy. So just because you have one bad guy doesn't mean you get a good guy. So you have to really think carefully of, well, you break it, you bought it. What does regime change mean? What does a crippled Iran mean? And what are the consequences of that? For example, destroying Iraq led to the rise of ISIS, and it created an enormous amount of instability in that whole area. So Saddam Hussein was a bad guy. ISIS was worse. So, and in many respects, when you look at Afghanistan, the Taliban's terrible, but some of the people that came in post-Taliban were even worse than the Taliban. Taliban was scared of them. They're like a flavor of Islam that's Old Testament would be scared of, the Syrian style, set them on fire and skin them. So then they're like, hey, maybe those Taliban guys aren't as bad as we thought, because some of these guys were some of these guys were really crazy. So you have to really have a strategy over the entire region of, how do we put all the pieces together geopolitically, and what do we want to achieve in this region? What doesn't make any sense to me is why the United States continues to say that Israel is like this essential linchpin to its geopolitical interests in the region. It's certainly an important ally, and it's certainly there's long-standing traditions of why we like them and why we work with them, but the Israeli interests are different from the U.S. interests. And what Trump needs to do, because his base, you look at Tucker Carlson picking on, for example, Ted Cruz recently, the MAGA base is not pro-Israel. They're not anti-Israel, but they're pro-America. And so the MAGA base is saying, well, hang on a second here, Mr. President, you have to explain to us the Venn diagram. Where does Israeli interest overlap with U.S. interest? You have to tell us that. And why is it good for us? What's the cooperative part of this? And it can't be Bibi Netanyahu saying, well, they're going to get a nuke. Because, Jon Stewart, he had this lovely clip. For like 20 minutes, he's ragging on Bibi, and he's showing like Netanyahu going 2007, 2012, 2015. Iran is 3 weeks away from a nuclear weapon. Iran is 3 months away from a nuclear weapon. It is imminent. Iran will have a nuclear weapon. We have to strike now. And the Iranians will instantly use this nuclear weapon on the United States if they have it. They're all insane, and they will murder all of us. It's like, well, Israel, you have 40 nuclear weapons, and it's mutually assured destruction. If they use a nuke on you, you would nuke Iran, and the Iranians would lose 20 to 40 million people. And the Iranians do not have ICBMs, missile subs, or long-range strategic bombers. So there's no way for the Iranians to nuke the homeland. So what are you asserting, that the Iranians are going to use a nuclear weapon on America and then provoke like us turning their whole country into glass? It doesn't make any strategic sense what they're saying. It's just nonsense. And so this is the contradiction. That's why Tucker Carlson is saying what he's saying, and this is why Steve Bannon is saying what he's saying. And a lot of these guys that are like in the Trump hard MAGA world are not really down with that. So the president has to talk about the strategy for the region as a whole. Where do our interests align with the Israeli interests? And then what are we going to do within that framework? And is that framework compatible with the strategic strike, with regime change, and then also for the rest of the players? Because it's also not just Iran, it's Turkey and Iraq. And then you also have Syria, which is maybe kind of sort of controlled by a CIA asset. Who knows? I mean, he was a terrorist fighter in Iraq and mysteriously released him from Abu Ghraib in 2011, and then just appeared in Syria with like money and weapons to go fight Assad. So he's like, I can't believe he's not CIA. It's like, who knows? He also let the entire Air Force and Navy of the Syrians get destroyed. They left the door open, and the Israelis took the advantage of it. So it's a dicey situation. And there needs to be a reset. And so I think the best thing Trump can do is get the South together. So get Saudi Arabia and get UAE and all these other guys, Bahrain, pull them all together, talk to them, including Egypt, and say, what do you guys want to see? And then get the North together, talk to Turkey, talk to Syria, talk to Iraq, say, what do you guys want to see? And get their opinions on how the region should be put together. And then go to the Israelis. And I think what you do is you tell the Israelis, look, we got to find a way to economically integrate you guys into the Middle East. Because if you're economically integrated, then nobody has any incentive to kill you. So they got this thing called Leviathan. It's a 1.5 trillion cubic meter natural gas field in the Mediterranean, right off the coast of Israel. My recommendation is get a trade alliance amongst the whole Middle East of the coalition of the willing, including Israel, and build a pipeline from Israel to Italy to sell natural gas to them, to displace the Russian pipelines that have been cut off from the war. And then Israel can be the natural gas supplier to all of Europe. And then what you do is you tell Saudi Arabia and everybody else, we can connect that pipeline to your oil production, and then suddenly you guys don't have to send tankers. You can directly export your oil to the rest of the to Europe. That's a very big MacGuffin. And you say, what is it going to take to do this over a 5 to 10 year period? And you probably solve the Gaza problem at the same time. So you go to Egypt and you tell the Egyptians, well, you're building New Cairo, but New Cairo costs $50 billion and you don't have the money for it. So I tell you what, let's take the land of Gaza, double, triple the size of that, take something on the Red Sea, give it to the Palestinians, give the Palestinians a sovereign wealth fund with 10% of the Leviathan field. Then you go to all the rest of the Middle East and say the cost of peace is you have to invest in building a Dubai for Gaza. And then the Palestinians can horizontally move down, and then they have right of travel in Israel. 2-3 generations, they'll get really rich. They can buy up a lot of their land back because the Gaza Strip will become for sale. And then it'll just be a blending. The war ends there. But there probably needs to be a tethering to how do we solve that problem? Because that's not an existential issue. It's an irritant to peace. It's one of those things where the Abraham Accords were moving their way through and they were starting economic integration. And I personally saw it. I was in Dubai and I saw Sheikh Mohammed at the World Governance Forum. He's the king of Dubai. And he was walking up on stage and he walked by an Israeli flag. Think about that. I'm in Dubai and there's an Israeli flag. The king of the country is willing to walk and be photographed next to it. That's unheard of 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So the Abraham Accords were working for economic integration, and MBS and Sheikh Mohammed and Abu Dhabi and all these other places are like, okay, we don't mind the Israelis. We can trade with them now. We can start making some deals with them. But then every time Hamas would wake up and they get scared, they say, well, shit, if these guys get economically integrated, we're going to get wiped out. So they go and strike and try to rock the boat and do something to make the Israelis strike, and then it creates the wedge issues and it prevents integration. So you have to solve that problem because it's one of those barriers. And Iran is the other big barrier. And the thing is, nobody likes Iran. It's not like, Saudi Arabia wakes up every day and they're like, oh yeah, those Iranians are great. They're historic enemies. so you have to solve that problem at the same time as well. And isolation has been the strategy for the past 40 years. It's kind of sort of worked, maybe, but there has to be something above and beyond isolation for that. And if you're going to do a decapitation strike, you do it with the whole Middle East on board, and then they all get together and they kind of work with how we're going to rebuild Iran into a new construction that is tenable. And that doesn't necessarily translate to a democracy, but a tenable, meaning that people can live with that construction, and it's no longer adversarial to U.S. interests. The problem is that right now, until Trump does the Venn diagram, Israel is leading the show. So they get to decide what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And I don't understand why this tiny nation of less than 10 million people can speak for the entire United States and the entire world on what our strategy should be. The president should lead. He's got to put down on the table what our interests are, build a coalition, and then tell Israel this is the way it's going to be. And then you give them a carrot. You get the pipeline. You guys are like Saudi Arabia now. You're selling natural gas for the next 100 years to the Europeans. You'll have a sovereign wealth fund just like them. Welcome to the club of the super rich countries like Abu Dhabi and the rest. Oh, and by the way, nobody has an incentive to bomb you, because if they bomb you, the oil pipeline gets shut off, and suddenly Saudi Arabia loses all that revenue, and Abu Dhabi loses all that revenue, right? So everybody has an incentive to talk to each other. You all get along. You're all League of Friends, League of Economic Friends, right? Economics solves geopolitics, and economics causes geopolitics. If we both want the same thing and we can't come to terms on it, we're going to go to war with each other. It could be land, it could be a natural resource, it could be an industry like Taiwan and the semiconductor industry, right? So there's always an economic thing at the end of the rainbow. And you have to think about that. So that's the strategy component. And then you always have to ask, what is the benefit to the United States for this? And it's incompatible for MAGA to say it's America first and always, but then we're not going to tell you what the America component is, and we're going to let another country drive our foreign policy. That was Joe Biden and Obama with lead from behind in Libya. And notice we had no North African strategy. So we let Mubarak get killed in Egypt, we let Gaddafi get killed in Libya, and it really didn't, in case of Libya, work out for anybody, now did it? We let the French lead that. And why did they lead that? Because Gaddafi had blackmail on Sarkozy. And Sarkozy killed Gaddafi to try to get rid of all that stuff. And Sarkozy ended up going to prison for it anyway. So, just never let another country run your foreign policy ever. It's like, this is America. We run our own shit. And we got to decide, like she does with China. What is our thing? We broadcast that. And then we say, who's with us on this? That's what it's got to be.
I agree with that. I don't know if you listen. I don't know if it's my microphone. I don't know what's going on. You hear me, Charles?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're coming in loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. But I agree with you. I was really pissed off with BB, throwing that first shot, right? Because it puts, if the United States of America, Trump and his team were like a day or two away from sitting down with Iran. My only problem is, why don't you let them sit down first and see what the hell was going to happen out of that
Right.
meeting before doing any of this shit, right? So
Right.
I was kind of like, when I remember where I was. I was working out, and I was just like, I see the fucking, the breaking news pop. I'm like, come on. And you know what happens? Everybody in crypto sells. I'm
Right.
only laughing because why are you selling? You don't even know why you're selling. All right. So whatever, the markets go down, right? All the markets get spooked and stuff. Everybody's out here. CNN, all the mainstream media news channels are like, oh my God, World War III's popping off and all that stuff,
Right.
right?
Right.
Now they're putting it out there that, the United States isn't attacking because, Trump's playing it carefully here because there are 200 plus scientists that are working in Iran, Russian scientists, that if they go ahead and do anything there, then Russia comes in, and now we're all dragged into lovely World War III.
And Russia loves. They got the
Yeah.
most flaccid nuclear penis of all time. Russia's like, we're gonna nuke you. We're gonna nuke you. It's like, you've been saying that since 1962. Either nuke or get off the nuke toilet. Okay, they keep dragging their fucking nuclear penis out, and it doesn't work.
Charles, I'm telling you, a lot of these people have never been to Eastern Europe. Like, they don't know how. Look, right now, they should have. If Russia was this superpower, they should have took out Ukraine in 3 days. Okay,
Yes.
they're not a
Yes.
superpower. Okay,
Yes.
they'd be lucky if they'd be able to have liftoff on their nukes. Like, honestly, that's
Yes.
how bad the country is. Okay,
Yes.
that's how bad it is. Okay, and again, I don't mean to shit on Russia, but there are a lot of good people there that have lived. You guys see really good stuff on, like, the Travel Channel, but ultimately there are people still waiting in lines at broken supermarkets to try to get bread. Okay, like, you have
Yeah.
this, the picture you guys have is completely different than reality. So to me, when they come in and they try to, Putin says, "Oh, like, what?" That's just talk for the media, because they
The
can't do
numbers are
shit.
the numbers are fucking Russia so hard. They only have 135 million people, and 10 million of them are under the age of 25. Now,
100%.
that was before the war started. Now that the
Yeah.
war started, they've lost 1.4 million people, so about a million people under the age of 25, and another million has left the country. So they only have 8 million people out of their 135 million that are under the age of 25. So when people start aging out, who replaces those people? And by the way, their growth rate for populations like 1.4 to 1.8.
Yeah.
So they're not replacing their population. So they have a huge demographic crisis that's coming. And so what do? They import immigrants. And who are the immigrants? They import the Chinese. And so the Chinese are doing what they did in Zambia, and they're doing what they did in CAR, and they're doing what they did in Congo and all these other places to the Russians. They're buying up all the natural resources, all the companies. So suddenly Ivan is being replaced with Wong, and what that means is that within 20 years to 30 years, that they're going to be an economic proxy state and owned by the Chinese. So the next
100%.
leader of Russia is probably going to be a puppet for China, which is just nuts. And if you think about it, that's Putin's number one problem. And no amount of rattle the saber and I'm going to nuke you and you're going to nuke me is ever going to change that with Putin. So this war has been a disaster for Russia from a demographic perspective. And you're absolutely right. They were perceived to be the second largest military power besides the United States, and they proved that they are a paper tiger. They have no NCO corps. They can't. They didn't maintain air superiority, even though they have a giant air force and the Ukrainians don't. Their ballistic missiles are lackluster. Okay, the hypersonic portfolio is decent, but everything else was terrible. They had these doomsday weapons. They were called thermal barracks, and yeah, they're horrible, but they didn't really do like what they said they were going to do. And all their stuff, their new stuff, like their new T-80 tanks and their mechanized infantry, all that shit got just defeated by $200 drones. So nothing that they've rolled out makes any sense. And the flag officers are all incompetent or corrupt or old, and they don't really know how to fight a war like this. And their special operations were terrible. The special operations didn't know how to do an operation to take over Kharkiv or Kiev. They couldn't take over the airport. They couldn't do a decapitation strike. They tried to kill Zelensky. They got fooled by like 20-year-old operators. So it was terrible. And they don't even have ISR. And they're using like unencrypted phone calls because their radios are so bad inside the field, and they're subject to a ton of electronic warfare and all these other things. And so it's not a real serious military. What Putin thought he had, it's not there. He took his pants off, and he's right there with Circle and that 4-inch penis. Maybe it's 3.5 now. He's getting a little old, okay? But he doesn't have the United States, okay? We're so fucking lethal. What people don't get is like because of GWAT, 20 years of hardcore fighting in the trenches, the U.S. military is so thoroughly good at killing people and so efficient, so good at it. And we've never really opened up completely. It's like having like the Lamborghini Revuelton, but you're in a school zone, so you have to just drive slow. But you got 1,000 horsepower in that car, man. And the U.S. military has that. And the killing efficiency and capabilities are just so unbelievable with our systems. So I just love Russia rattling its fucking sabers. It's just crazy. Oh, they'll nuke us. We can't let them nuke us. I'm not worried about it at all.
I'm not either. I wish, obviously, again, I wish Israel would have, Bibi specifically, the prime minister would have went about things differently, allowed the United States to sit down at the table,
Yeah.
see where that went, and then, and I think, everybody has access to the internet now, and they have a whole page going back from 1995 where Bibi has come out and stated that, hey, they're 5 days away from a nuclear weapon. So it's from 1995 all the way till today that Iran is 5 days away from having a nuclear weapon. So now, obviously, people in America are reading this and like, why are you dragging us into this shit
Right.
that we don't want to be a part of? And that should be the reaction. It's like, hey, like you decided to do this. Don't call us in now. Like, now I'm going to get shit for this, but I don't care. I'm an American, and the way I see it, I don't want to be dragged into another 10-year fucking war. I mean,
Right.
shock and awe.
Right.
Like what happened out of that? They wanted Americans out 2 weeks later. We found no weapons of mass destruction. Do I want Iran to have a nuclear weapon? Absolutely not. I do not
Right.
want them to have a nuclear weapon. But don't tell me that they're 6 days away from having a nuke. That shit's been going on since 1995. I mean, you want to get rid of that regime. The people, I get it. The Iranian people, I spoke to Patrick Bet-David. He said the Iranian people will love new leadership. They will love to live the way they lived in the 1960s. If you've seen pictures and videos, it was a thriving economy. It was was just thriving to be in Iran. And then all of a sudden, obviously, the Ayatollah came through, and now it's horrific. But as for crypto, to leave it here, I guess, is this a little waiting period once this once this shit is done in the Middle East, which I think should be in a week or two, I hope, because there's only been good news. I mean, Trump's coming out here saying that we're going to lead the world in digital assets. Everything's bullish on the crypto side. Even Democrats are bullish on crypto. I mean, are we just waiting for this Iran? Exactly. Are we just waiting for Iran and Israel to get their shit done so we can get going?
Yeah. Dude, it's like you're driving, right? And you're hungry, and just like there's nowhere to eat, There's no, and just restaurant passes you by, restaurant passes you by. Like a guy's offering tamales. You want to buy some tamales? Nah, nah, nah. God, just nowhere to eat, nowhere to eat. And this is crypto right now. Like we passed the Genius Act. Trillions of dollars are entering the space. Yeah, yeah, but what about Iran? Like this thing. World War Three. World War Three. And and then they're like, well, the Market Structure Act is coming. It's like gonna bring all this new innovation, all this new thing, and like the Mag 7 will enter, like billions of new crypto users coming in. Yeah, 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 but what about the tariffs? Tariffs. Oh my God, the tariffs. What do we? I just got to keep driving. Like fucking crypto, grow the hell up.
Exactly.
You owe us a bull market. God damn it! I signed up for that. You owe it to us. Damn it, crypto. Get your ass off the couch. Get your ass back in the game. We waited 4 motherfucking years. We endured Gary Gensler. We were loyal, and you have to come. You have to come. Okay,
There was nothing more
bastards.
bearish than
So
fucking Gary. Okay, there's nothing
yes,
worse. Nothing
yes,
worse.
yes, and we literally have the U.S. government pumping our bags. Damn it, this is this is so crazy. Back in my day, we were like some B-list celebrity would mention Bitcoin, and we would go to Reddit. And we were like, oh God, oh my God, that guy who played in Goonies, the one who did the Truffle Shuffle, he mentioned Bitcoin. Oh my God, we're
Yeah.
famous now. This is so good. We're all going to do the Truffle Shuffle. Let's send him stuff. Let's go find him. And now you got like the U.S. government, the largest, most powerful country in the world, say we're going to take a position of 212,000 Bitcoin and start buying Bitcoin. And we're going to pass laws to get everybody into crypto. And we're going to tell people to use crypto. And we're like, yeah, I don't know. But what about tariffs? I don't know. Oh, fuck you. You will pump, God damn it. If I have to drag and do this bull market myself, I will. David, we're gonna figure this out. You're gonna come with the ranch. We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna figure out how to get
I'll
this
just
bull
smoke
market
some
started because
cigars
I'm
at
getting
the
antsy.
ranch.
It's like,
Pet Nike and
yeah,
shit,
I know.
and figure out how we can send
Yes,
crypto.
Jesus, it's like crypto. It's just like a gangly teenager that doesn't want to do it. It's like get your ass out of bed and get back
That's
to
what
work.
happens. What
Stupid
happens when
crypto.
90% of the space are full of virgins? But yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like what your first comment was when you started off the show. I appreciate you, Charles. I hope that you're having fun wherever you are. You're like a rock star on tour everywhere in every country. But I definitely love your.
I'm just about to
Say
fly
it
out.
again.
I'm just about to fly out. I'm just about to fly out. I got a very important, massive podcast that I'm going to be on. So I got to fly to this particular host, and so I think we're filming the next few days, and that's going to be fun. Can't say who it is, but I think a lot of people know him and like him, especially military people. So it's going to
Oh,
be fun to be on the show. So
I
look for
already know
that.
who that is. I won't say a word. As soon as you said that part, I
I ain't
already
saying
got it.
nothing.
Uh,
Yeah, I ain't
yeah.
saying nothing.
But congratulations, have fun, and 100%. I appreciate you coming on to this show and giving your thoughts on everything that's happening in crypto and in politics. And have a safe flight, man. And talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
See you
Charles.
soon, Dave.
That's Charles, man. That's right. Episode 570, the breakdown, sponsored by Gemini. Thank you guys for bearing with me as we had audio issues. I have no clue how these audio issues started up. But you know what? Today I had connection issues on Spaces. So I don't know. I don't know what the hell is going on. But it is what it is. Again, thanks to Charles. I hope this war comes in, and nobody needs this goddamn war, man. And by the way, why did people sell crypto? You're supposed to go into crypto. You're not supposed to get out of crypto. Crypto's the safe haven, man. What the fuck? Where the fuck you going? Where the fuck you going? What the fuck's going on? Anyway, I also had the morning show today, and it was the most bearish show I ever held. I'm talking about people talking about the bull run is over in 3 months. Ethereum's going to zero. All this stuff is being talked about. I just honestly, it was the worst. I didn't even end it with an outro. That's how bad it was. Anyway, the real ones aren't selling. I'm not selling. I'm holding and acquiring. Like I said, I believe the meme economy, by the way, only 10 to 15 altcoins will do well. Everything else will be in the meme economy, and I stand on that. And I see people from the altcoin markets shifting into the memes because that's where everybody is. Okay, so Bitcoin, Ethereum, the altcoins, 10 to 15 of them, and then you have the meme economy that I think will completely go parabolic. I really do. That's it. That's how I'm feeling. Again, thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate you guys. The sponsor, Gemini. Click the link, sign up. $1,000 traded in crypto, get $100 in Bitcoin. Also, look at the Bitcoin credit card. Orange pill yourself. Orange is the new gold, right? GNN is the network that powers this show every single day. Shout out to everybody who tunes in. Appreciate you guys. GNN, the Gakshi News Network. Tune into all the media personalities. 2 p.m. right now. Tune into Hotep Jesus. He's on Kick. The Griff Report, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Julie Kennis on YouTube, Crypto News. 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tune in the nightly recap. That's sponsored by Hoppy. I'll be on there doing the news tonight, recapping everything that we should go ahead and be talking about. On that note, guys, thank you very much once again for tuning in. And I am out. Thank God my microphone works. Man. Thank God the microphone finally fucking